Hi, I'm Deborah Vogler of Instant Insight, reporting from SEMI's ISS Conference 2012 in Half Moon Bay, California. My guest is Dr. Bernie Meyerson of IBM. Welcome to the show, Dr. Meyerson.
Oh, thank you.
My first question for you is basically, could you recap some of the results that you just presented to conference attendees with respect to some of IBM's innovations, the 12-atom bit, the use of graphene and silicon nanowires, and 3D integration?
The overall emphasis of the conference is what do you do as we enter the era where silicon effectively offers less and less benefit with each generation, not because we're failed at it, but rather it simply is approaching its physical limits. When you start looking at physical limits, though, it's not just silicon. The entire technology field has made so much progress, elements of it are getting down to the atomic level. So we look at where do things end. The interesting thing that we were addressing here is what happens, as an example, when silicon goes fully quantum mechanical. It could be, we got to have a debate whether it's 5, 6, 7 nanometers. But you do get to a point it doesn't scale further. At that point, the things you were talking about, things like silicon nanowires, where instead of a classical FET, you literally wrap a gate completely around a nanoscopic piece of silicon. That actually sort of gives you an idea of the limit of that capability still staying in the silicon system. So that was one of the things we discussed, and we saw actually a pretty good advantage there, but nothing that's a factor of 10 beyond what we have today, so beyond what we will have, rather, in silicon. So the next question is, are there other materials? Graphene, which is just essentially a monolayer of graphite, a monolayer of carbon, has some very interesting electrical properties, and we talked about some extremely high-speed graphene transistors we demonstrated, about 280 gigahertz. More importantly, they've been integrated in a 200-millimeter process, so you could use them, for instance, in communications. So that's one of the things we discussed. Again, after the limit of silicon, what else do you do? The other thing we're talking about as a different example is carbon nanotubes. Same idea. What do you do post-silicon? Is there something better and smaller, faster, cheaper? None of these are there yet, but the initial results look promising enough. We'll continue investigating. We emphasize the need to understand you have to make a billion of these things work at the same time, so having made one cute one doesn't quite cut it. You need to do a little better than that. Going further, though, it's not just silicon. And one of the things we announced only on the 13th of this month, very recently, just a couple of days ago, was the ability, for instance, to make the world's smallest bit, literally a stable magnetic bit at 12 atoms, 12 iron atoms arranged using our scanning tunneling microscope technology to move the atoms around and then create individual bits. So we could create bits which contain these 12 atoms, 1 bit, but then can create bytes, 8 bits, out of 96 atoms, and then go ahead and build entire systems out of that, hopefully at some point, so that you have this incredibly dense storage technology, orders of magnitude more dense than what's today. Again, the emphasis is we want to find out where the limits are. What we found there is if you go below 12 atoms, the research team located in Almaden here basically found that if you go below that, quantum mechanical effects cause it to lose memory randomly. So it does look like roughly this 12 atom is a fundamental limit.
And I guess we should also clarify for viewers who might not have been here or might just be casual industry observers that you're not really talking about, when you say post-silicon era, it's not really without silicon.
Absolutely. And when you say post-silicon, we've been so used to getting literally a factor of 1 million benefit out of shrinking silicon, you can't get that benefit anymore. So what happens is that element that's been driving progress, just the sheer performance benefit of an individual silicon transistor, goes away. Now, that by no means means silicon goes away. In fact, one of the things I summarized at this talk is silicon will be around for literally tens of generations. There's no question. But what you have to start looking for is other places, by either better integration, architecture, software, that you can get more performance to make up for what you've lost in the individual device performance that is no longer advancing at the same pace. So lots of innovation is required. But here's the good news. Technology has been doing so well that with the advent of 3D and stacking chips and architectural changes in software, actually I think what we will see is an increase in the rate and pace of information technology's improvement.
Now, one of the observations you made that I thought was quite critical during your presentation was that the innovation trajectory that this industry is going to require is going to need a pipeline of people with diverse skills. But how are we going to get that?
One of my other duties, apart from the VP of Innovation at IBM, is I also run the University Relations Organization globally. we actually are focused on investing heavily across the globe in university efforts that are actually designed to create that very pipeline of talented individuals, among others, who will help. In other words, supporting the basic science, basic technology. So you have to remember, as an organization that counts on this on this steady pipeline of people, to actually participate in its generation.
Thank you very much for being my guest.
Thank you.